Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Ruby Rogues podcast. This week on our panel, we have Dave Kimura.
Hey, everyone.
John Epperson.
Hello.
Matt Smith.
Hello.
I'm Charles Max Wood from devchat.tv. Starting to get the Rails remote conf stuff together, so keep an eye out for that. We have a special guest, two special guests this week, and my Spanish is horrendous, so I'm sorry in advance. We have Gonzalo Rodriguez and Braulio Martinez.
Hey, hello. Glad to be here.
Your app is slow, and you probably don't even know it. Maybe it's fine in most places, but then the customer loads the page up, that one page, and after a couple of seconds, their attention disappears into Twitter and never comes back. The reality is there are performance issues in your app, and they're affecting your customer experience. What you need to do is hook up your app to Scout APM and let it start telling you where the slowdowns are happening. It makes it really easy. It tells you how slow things are and what the problem is, like N+1 queries or memory bloat. It's also built for developers, so it makes it really easy to identify where the fix needs to go. I've hooked it up to some of my apps and I saw what I needed to fix in a couple of minutes. Try it today for free and they'll donate $5 to the open source project of your choice. Just go to scoutapm.com/devchat and then deploy it to your app. Once you do that, they'll donate the $5. That's scoutapm.com/devchat.
Do you gentlemen want to introduce yourselves real quick? Let us know who you are, why you're famous.
For sure. Well, not sure if we are famous, but I'm Braulio Martinez. I'm a software engineer. Gonzalo Rodriguez, also a software engineer. We have been doing Ruby for the last 10 years. And yeah.
Hi, everyone. Gonzalo here. Yeah, with Braulio, we're friends from university, and our path cross with him and Marcelo and Sebastian also, and we started Cedar Code a couple of years ago to join our knowledge in Ruby and drop our passion into that and open source software also.
Yeah, Cedar Code, we are both co-founders here. We're a small team of engineers that help other companies grow in size and expertise. We help them grow their engineering teams. And yeah, as Gonzalo said, we have a strong passion for open source. We have a special piece in our hearts for security-related stuff, and we have been mostly dedicated to the WebAuthn ecosystem for the last 2 years. So yeah, that's pretty much us.
Very cool. Why did you call it Cedar Code? It doesn't sound like a very Spanish name.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. It was really hard to come up with that name. Took us a long time. It's, kind of the kind of wood you use in furniture that lasts long. So we see ourselves as engineers that build software that it's designed to last, that it's durable.
I like it.
Yeah.
So do you want to give us kind of the 10,000-foot view on what WebAuthn is?
Sure. So there's the motivation, but maybe we can come a little bit to that after we kind of describe what WebAuthn is. WebAuthn, it's an open standard that defines a set of rules for APIs that enables users to kind of strongly register and authenticate on web applications using public key cryptography. It's not the formal definition that it's defined in that open standard I was mentioning, but it's kind of how I put it into simpler words, actually. So yeah, then there's maybe it's better if we try to describe what that means for a user or a web developer.
Yeah, for example, to put it in simpler terms, what's exciting for you as a user of the web when you're using a web browser is instead of, for example, if you have your bank account, which you want to keep as secure as possible, and you use a user, you have a username and a password on this site, and of course, the bank website enforces a second factor, which can be either an SMS code or an authenticator app called OTP applications to enter a code. Instead of using this second factor, for example, you could use your web browser can ask for you to touch for example, on the Mac, the Touch ID, or if you're using a mobile phone, a web browser through a mobile phone, you could use the fingerprint reader to signal this second step, or other devices like USB dongles and touch them as a second step. So from a user's perspective, this is exciting that you can use as a second factor on different websites, something that has stronger security, but at the same time has a very decent to great user experience, instead of reducing the user experience on behalf of greater security, which has been the most common thing that happened in the past with security. That instead of gaining user experience, you were degrading user experience when you get more security. But this is what is exciting about WebAuthn, that it gets you stronger security without degrading the user experience in general.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, you said that it was public-private key cryptography. So how does that actually work?
So then we can look at from the perspective of actually the web developer, and why you would want to support this on your website. The way that it works for you as a web developer is there's two pieces for a web application. There's the JavaScript piece, and then there's the backend piece. Mm-hmm. So on the JavaScript side, what you're using are the APIs that the web browser natively implements. So the standard defines what the JavaScript APIs that the web browsers need to implement for you as a web developer to use, and the web browser will communicate with the user device on behalf of you. So the web browser in this case is like the middleman. So you when you want to register one of these devices or authenticators, you might call it, you call this JavaScript API to create a new credential or public key keeper. And what you get back as a web developer is the public key credential, the public key piece of the credential, and the device keeps the private key, of course. So then you store on the database next to your user public key that later can be used, of course, to verify signatures that were signed with the private key that this device keeps stored next to the user. So that is the public private key piece. So this is for web developers. The exciting thing is that this brings good user experience around public key cryptography, which has been there for a very long time, but there wasn't a very good UX around that.
To complement a little bit what Gonzalo said, it's the basic way most web applications work nowadays. You have like this shared secret, which is the passwords between the users and the servers. Mm-hmm. And the actual verification, when you, for example, try to log in after registering, it's done in the server. And the server is also responsible to store that shared secret and store it right in a way that no one else can know. That's WebAuthn changes this paradigm completely, because given that we are talking about this credential concept, which is the private and public keeper, the only one that it's gonna be responsible to authenticate the user. After that, it's gonna be the actual device that the user holds, what Gonzalo called the authenticator. And that changes things completely, and the server it's gonna stop storing something which is it's no longer a secret; it's just a public key. But that's because the server is no longer responsible to perform the authentication completely on their side, on its side.
And so WebAuthn, it can also use a actual physical key fob to do the authentication, correct?
Correct. So another very exciting thing about the WebAuthn standard and how it's open is that a lot of devices can act as an authenticator on behalf of the user. So the user can use array of different devices that are compliant with the WebAuthn spec and can communicate with the web browser, just implementing whatever the spec says that they need to implement. And in summary, what they need to do, what they're capable of doing is on demand, creating a public and private key pair and responding with a public key and storing the private key in order to create signatures later on. So this opens up the possibility of a USB key fob doing that, because it's capable of creating these key pairs and performing another set of verifications, which is not interesting to go into detail, but in the core, it is the possibility of creating this public and private key pairs. So that could be a USB key fob. It could be something on your laptop, like in the case of a Mac, the Touch ID driver, creating this public and private key pairs. It could be on an Android device, the fingerprint reader. Also, so the Android operating system key store can create these credentials and communicate back with the browser. So the standard is written in a way in which is general enough for anything to become a WebAuthn authenticator, just by implementing these APIs and being able to perform digital signatures based on these key pairs. So that is the exciting thing. So as time goes on, more devices are becoming standardized in a way that they can be used by a user in different websites. So, for example, right now, GitHub supports this, and you can go into your profile and on your GitHub account and register what they call security keys, which are actually what we are calling WebAuthn credentials. And anything like any of those things that I mentioned can be used when you get the pop-up asking you, the web browser, for example, the Chrome web browser asking you to touch your device when you ask GitHub to register a security key. So security key is like a very, very general, broad name to name the fingerprint reader on your mobile, the key fob, or any other thing that can be
compliant in the other one.
Yeah, a compliant device. So one of the great challenges for WebAuthn is it's around nomenclature, because finding a term so that is intuitive enough for the user to understand what a name can represent all these different devices is something very challenging. So, for example, GitHub opt to name it security keys, and we'll see whether with time people it's intuitive enough to understand what this stands for. But that is one of the challenges in the industry that needs to overcome, is that making this intuitive enough for the users to understand what are the possibilities. But the possibilities are there, and that's what's exciting.
Can you speak a bit to give us a succinct history of WebAuthn, because it came from another standard, and then also kind of the adoption of all of the browsers and devices, and then also what's left in terms of gaps in that, whether it's browsers or whether it's certain devices, whether we can use Face ID on iOS products.
Yeah, I can speak to that. We're not involved in the. So this is something that I think it's been something that in the industry what wanted to be solved for a long time. And I think one of the what is called the FIDO Alliance, the first Identity Online Alliance, came together in order to solve that. And we are not associated. Just to be clear, we are not associated or are not members of that. We just got interested in this and build help with adoption on the Ruby ecosystem by building the WebAuthn gem. But we didn't take part of the development of the standard. But what it going back to your question, what I understand is that when this it became clear that there needed to be a better solution for strongly authenticated on the web, given that phishing attacks were very prevalent and the passwords were also a very insecure way of storing secrets, as Braulio was saying on the database, and very prone to hacker attacks. So the first step in the path, I think, was to the U2F standard, which stands for Universal Second Factor, which was developed by Google and Ubico, and later adopted by the FIDO Alliance. And that you can think that as a predecessor of WebAuthn, or WebAuthn being an evolution of U2F. But what WebAuthn has that U2F already had, and what U2F first started providing, it was U2F was only focusing on solving the second factor of the authentication. So it wasn't actually tackling the password problem. But what it had in common with WebAuthn is that it brought the interaction of putting public and private keys creation on this USB fob key. So that was kind of the first step. So there was this Ubico USB key fob that were able to create this public and private key pair in order to be able to, with those digital signatures, provide the proof to the web server that this key fob is present next to the user. So that was kind of the first step to improve the second factor. And WebAuthn is kind of an evolution of that, and actually making what is different from U2F. What is key is that the FIDO Alliance and the W3C became together in order to this be written as a W3C recommendation, so that web browsers actually are encouraged to implement this. So U2F was not a W3C recommendation, so the implementation on the web browsers was not great. So Chrome implemented in the past, but other browsers did different implementation. So WebAuthn became more of like a web industry standard, and it added other improvements around U2F.
Yeah, maybe to talk a little bit more about how we started with all of this. The standard started, the first draft came up in May of 2016 or something like that. And we started working around the idea, getting interested into WebAuthn itself around May of 2018. At that moment, it was just a candidate. The standard was just at a candidate stage. And Gonzalo was, checking news. I think it was something about Mozilla's news blog post or something. And he said, hey, there's nothing in Ruby that does all this cryptography heavy lifting for you as a Ruby developer if you want to do this in your application. We started by looking at the standard, reading, understanding it, and trying to figure out what we could do for a general Ruby user that wanted to have all this in its application. And we evolved together with the standard evolution as well, because the standard started going forward and had since it started and it became an actual recommendation standard, we had like 11 versions, and we had to evolve the library together with the standard itself, and that was fun.
Yeah, it's still evolving, but
still evolving,
the core is there, and there's already great support from browsers and platforms. The last one was iOS, like iPhones. The Safari web browser on the iPhone was the last piece that came to the puzzle, and adoption has been great so far.
In terms of API, when we started, pretty much it was, I think there was only Firefox and a few options to actually build and test all of this. And as things evolved, I mean, we started seeing many other actors joining. In terms of implementation on the client side, the last one was probably Apple. That wasn't a move that we were sure it was going to happen, but we are so happy that it did, and they actually joined this force in the standard and working on standardizing all of this. And then there's maybe the question was also wondering about adopters in terms of web application that started doing adding WebAuthn to their stack. One of the early adopters we see, for example, one of the first companies that started using the library was login.gov. They kind of were one of the first adopters we got, and it was helpful because we saw a real use case out there in the web.
Yeah, which is they have their application is open source, so you could see that how they implemented that from the start.
Yeah, many others have come after login.gov. We saw GitHub, Shopify. Nowadays, most of the big companies are using WebAuthn as a second factor. Yeah, that's the making it your an option for the second factor. For the second factor was kind of what we imagined, because it's the natural first step towards like an ideal future of actually being able to get rid of passwords altogether.
So you would say at this stage it's fairly safe to, well, you certainly can offer it because not everyone is required. It can be an optional second step. You can still default back to SMS or email, second factor, all those archaic methods.
Yes. So right now the trend that we are seeing is that as you said, this is being added as one of the second step options. So you still have the password as like the first factor in your authentication system. So this is like a shared secret between the user and the web server. This is like a knowledge factor. And then there's the second one, which most of the websites out there have a SMS or as one of the options, OTP authenticator apps, and then WebAuthn, or we can call it security keys. Maybe that's one of the terms that is becoming like a de facto standard, using the security key term. That is the current trend that we are seeing. It's great so that users become there's a learning curve for users, of course, and getting acquainted with the idea of touching a device in order to perform the second step. The exciting thing for the future is that the possibility is there for this to become both the first factor and the second factor at the same time. So there's a possibility of websites dropping the password altogether and just using a WebAuthn compliant device to perform the two steps. And that is, the user can prove the possession of the device, and at the same time, the device can perform what is called a local user verification with the user. So you as a web server can be sure that the device perform the local user verification in for example, fingerprint read verification. and that is only and that is local. That verification is local to the user, to the device and the user. As a web server, we don't. You as a developer, you don't store any. So this is important in terms of privacy. We are the web server is not storing any personal identifiable information. You still store the public key that this device provided you. It's just that you can ask the device to perform this fingerprint scan, or in the case of Windows, the face scan that Windows Hello has, or any other thing that can be implemented in the future that is actually using biometrics. But it's very important to state that there's no personal identifiable information going all the way to the web server. It's only that biometric verification is only performed on the actual user device. So that's also very exciting that users can that websites can actually forget in the future about the passwords, and just enforce this local user verification on these WebAuthn compatible devices.
That's really nice, because I sometimes hate putting in my passwords to some middle ground sites that you're like, I have no idea how they're storing this this password.
Yeah, and there's the numbers are quite scary. You know, one of the things we learned is like there's a common number that it's in a few websites with the corresponding sources. But for example, 81% of all breaches are related to hacked passwords, for example. So the numbers are quite low, for example, for people that actually uses any second factor. It's like 28%. So passwords are a really bad user experience, as you said as well, in many ways.
Yeah. In order to get to this future in which we can drop passwords, to be honest, there's some room for improvement still on the WebAuthn ecosystem. So mostly around how to handle lost devices, how to do account recovery. So we are used to just this forget password links in everywhere, and it's so nowadays with the password it's fairly easy to recover your account by just saying that you forgot your password. So in order to get into a state with we can drop passwords, there's still improvement need to be made on how to handle account recovery with WebAuthn devices. But there's work being done on that, and we are hopeful that improvements will be made. But it's quite exciting what the possibilities are for the future around this.
Yeah. I'm excited to see WebAuthn supporting something like Face ID for the phone. So I think that would almost kind of solve the issue around losing devices, because those little key fobs, the little USB keys that you plug into your computer, which act as essentially your password, that's definitely an issue for me, being able to always keep track of that, especially if I'm on the go a lot, because either one of my kids are going to grab it and then lose it, or something else is going to happen to it. Then I'm locked out of essentially everything. But having something like a Face ID and being able to do a biometric authentication would be really cool. And I know that in the United States, at least, there's been a lot of biometric legislation passed in various states, which actually actively prevent websites and stuff to gather that information. So to hear that WebAuthn will track the biometric data only on the actual device, that you're not transmitting that, you're going to transmit a public key or something to the service instead, I think that's really helpful for the future.
Yeah, so that's right. So yeah, you store just the public key on the website, and what that does is just it proves that there's a link between that public key and the private key that's stored on your phone. In this case, that you are talking about the Face ID. So if you lose your phone in that case, you will need to have some backup system, so another security key register for you to have a backup. Because if you buy a new phone and you use the Face ID on that new phone, that will create on that interaction will create a new key pair, and that won't match the public key that's stored on the website. So we will still need. What is probably going to happen is that you need to use this like Face ID, biometric interactions to actually perform your day-to-day authentications, but you still need to register these backup security keys. For example, maybe having a key fob that you use to just have as a backup in case, and you can store that in your home or somewhere else. That will be the current way of backing up your accounts. But there's, as I was saying, it's still early in the process, but there's some work being done on the FIDO Alliance on how to do that without having to have a backup device and being able to migrate some of the key material with in a secure way, of course. But that's something that might happen in the future. We'll see what.
Yeah, just to throw a headline, the experiments or the actual discussions have been around allowing some devices to derive keys from others. So, for example, you say I have this key, security key, this Ubiquiti, for example, security key, and I'm gonna allow my cell phone to derive the keys from it. So then you can register everywhere you want, GitHub, Facebook, etc. And if you lose your phone, you won't have to go to each of those sites and have registered the backup. That will be like done automatically by being able to derive the keys from one device to the next. That's kind of the headline, and it's complex, and we are not really involved into anything like of those discussions, but we have read about them. So
right. That sounds a little bit like the signing keys that web registrars use for SSH keys. And so the same kind of idea. Yeah. And so it's authoritative because you know that I've authorized that key to represent me, and then of course, what I really want is I want it to be put into blockchain, and I want my phone to use machine learning to identify me my smell. And then and then we'll put it on the iPhone. We'll call it I stink. Anyway,
we'll see. Maybe sometime.
But it just it sounds a little bit funny. I'm being a little bit tongue in cheek, but I mean, you really could do it off of any kind of thing, then, right? As long as you're comfortable with the way it identifies you.
Yeah. Anything, as Gonzalo said at the beginning, it's like any platform, anything that can create these keepers and can return data in the formats that the standard specify can become a device. And
So you said that this is already in Chrome?
So the WebAuthn API, it's implemented in Chrome, yes.
Okay, so the API is there, so you need a plugin then for it?
No, it's native in the browser.
Yeah, if you go to a off screen that requires it, like on GitHub, then it'll actually pop up a Chrome modal that says insert in your USB key.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And if you're on an iOS device, now I think it was 11.3 or later, they added in where it'll actually use the NFC, the near field communication, that if your USB dongle supports it, then you get a pop-up on your phone and you just kind of tap it or get it near your phone and it'll do the authentication that way as well.
Yep. Yeah, we have done the testing ourselves to actually, that was really exciting.
So so this is widely adopted in terms of web browsers. So Chrome, Firefox, Edge, Safari, both on the on the iOS and OS X. So it's widely adopted. There's some big players, big websites already supporting this: Google, Microsoft accounts, GitHub, Dropbox, Shopify. It's out there. You can as a user you can already use it. And in terms of the communication, so just to go back to maybe the basics. So there's the web server, the web browser, and the security key, let's call it, or the authenticator, as we will call it before. The communication between the web server and the web browser is by using the JavaScript native APIs that are supported by all these browsers right now. Like you would use any of the other JavaScript APIs, the DOM API or the Bluetooth API or whatever, something like that. And then the communication between the web browser or the platform to the security key. It can be USB, Bluetooth, or near field communication also. So there's a lot of possibilities as you were mentioning also.
Are you trying to figure out how to stay current with Ruby on Rails? Maybe you were sad that you missed out on some of the interactions you could have gotten at RailsConf, but you're still not sure you want to travel because of COVID-19? Well, I'm putting on a Rails Remote Conf. We're doing it in August, and it's going to feature a lot of your favorite people from the Ruby Rogues panel and other friends and neighbors across the community. So if you want to join in the fun, come watch some of the RailsConf video talks with us during a live watch party online, and then come see all of the live talks the next 3 days. Then come check us out at railsremoteconf.com. That's railsremoteconf.com.
Dave, I hear you on the not wanting to use the USB key, but the nice thing about the USB key is when you switch iPhones, you still have the USB key, which, for those of us that have been using this or Google Authenticator for years, and some of the Google Authenticator applications don't transfer from device to device. And so when you get your new one, you've got to have both of them and switch everything over. And
Right now, the recommendation, for example, some websites, what they're doing is actually enforcing that you register at least two security keys. As I was saying previously, it's like you use one of those as the easy one, like something like the Touch ID, or something in the case of Microsoft, the Windows Hello, something like that. And then the other one would be the actual UV key or something like that you use to switch between registering different devices. So or as a backup. But some websites are actually asking you to register more than one, in order to be safe on your side. Others don't. We'll see what the trend is for the future. But still, websites are supporting the other second factors, of course, also as a way of as a backup also. So SMS and OTP also is still not dropped. Nobody is still dropping those in favor of WebAuthn. So it's still a process that it will take probably a few years to see what the trend is.
Yeah, and just to clarify, this is a second factor, right? So you still have to have a username and password or some other method of authenticating alongside it.
So the trend. So right now it's been you can think of by default it can be used as a second factor, because every device can prove that is sending to the web server is that the user has a possession of this device, right? So you mix that with the user knowledge of a secret, like the password, and you have like a two-factor authentication. So the possession of the device and the knowledge of the password.
Yeah, I was just imagining that somebody steals your USB key or something, right? So you want that other user knowledge factor.
Right, of course. But then there's you can think of WebAuthn having this other layer on top of it, or this other premium feature, which is the WebAuthn compliant device can support what you can call local user verification. So it's not the case of the normal YubiKeys, but for example, if you're using the Touch ID of the Mac, then it in the same tab, it's actually performing two proof. It's the proof of the possession of that device, and at the same time, there's a verification of the fingerprint between the device and the user. So if you lose that Mac and someone else taps that Touch ID, it won't work because the fingerprint won't match, and that won't release the private key to perform the signature on the response. So the authentication won't work. In that case, if the device is performing local user verification as a web server, you can think of that as it's like you're getting two factors on the same interaction. So in that case, you can consider dropping the password potentially.
That makes sense, because I'm planning on holding on to all my fingers. So
even on the YubiKeys, you can set it up to ask for a PIN.
Yes,
exactly.
Unlock the device, which you can use for SSH keys and PGP keys and everything else as well.
Yes. Yes, that will be another second, like an extra factor of a knowledge factor on top of the possession factor of the actual YubiKey. So yeah, you're right, of course.
So I've seen several implementations of this, and I'm curious on your thoughts of, like you said, you could go passwordless if you have that second factor on the device. I've also seen people or certain sites ask for username, password still plus the device, and others for just a password plus the device. And can you kind of give your 2 cents on the pros and cons of each of those? Is it just kind of on one side you have ease of use, and on the other side you have, you could almost go to 3-factor on the other.
We didn't get too theoretical, but there's like this classification in the authentication factors you can get. There's the possession, the knowledge factors, and the inherent factors. Ideally, the security you need on your application depends a lot on what you're defending. For example, it's not the same to have a bank than your Facebook account. There's not the same level of needs. But ideally, any authentication system needs at least two to be actually secure. But ideally, you will have the three of them, right? You'll have something you will have something you possess, and you will have something you are. Any extra layer you add to that, it sometimes means a decrease on the user experience, right? If you have to type a password and then go to fetch your phone for a second, some OTP code, and then there's an extra thing. Any extra layer, you are damaging your user and making it hard to make use of its account. So I think you need to really evaluate what you're trying to defend from and know there's some acceptable level of basic security where things are good enough. And WebAuthn was meant to solve this in the most efficient way, thinking in both security and user experience.
Yeah, I'd say that for like in nowadays 2020, for any general purpose application, just like having 2-factor is probably enough. That's what we are what we think in general. Maybe we need to go deeper on what is a general purpose application, but something that is not like excluding banks or military software or something like that, like a general application. Nowadays, two factors sounds like enough, and putting a third factor seems like too much, like to like asking too much to your users. It seems so. In the past, when the web was starting, it was common to have just one factor, of course, just the password, and was this just one factor. That with time, and as hacking evolved and technology evolved, we've seen that it's clear that we need a second factor with time, it's clear that that's needed as a baseline. But going the third factor seems too much for general purpose applications. So I wouldn't recommend a web developer working on a regular application to go more than two. So just focus on two factors and think what those should be. You can mix probably what's a knowledge factor with a possession factor probably. So in the case of the password and tapping a device, or you see examples everywhere, like when you go to an ATM and you have your ATM card, which is a possession factor, and then you type the PIN, which is the knowledge factor, and you're mixing two factors just to authenticate to the ATM. So that could be seen everywhere in other examples.
Yeah, depends a lot also on what you choose as a second factor, because the answer to your question is kind of conditionally to what's your actual second factor. For example, SMS suffer a lot from hacking from many different ways. OTP also have their risks. So
so something that we maybe is something worth clarifying. Making emphasis is that part of the WebAuthn interaction is that is making sure that that the interaction between the user and the website is safe from phishing attacks. So this is a very strong improvement in terms of comparing WebAuthn as a second factor to SMS and OTP, which actually suffer from phishing attacks. So we're talking about a user receiving a fake email that's actually asking them to enter to their bank account, and this is a fake email that is disguising like a real bank account email, and they go to this fake website that is actually the same in terms of look and feel to their actual bank account website. And if that bank has password and also SMS as a second factor, it's still vulnerable to phishing attacks, because the attacker can sit in between the real website and the user, and the user will receive the SMS code, put it on the fake website, and the attacker will actually relay that information to the real bank account website. And the user, in order for these phishing attacks not to happen, we are asking the users to actually realize that in the address bar of the website, realizing that there is a typo on the URL or something like that. So we are very bad at actually spotting those typos, but computers are very good at comparing two strings. So when there's a WebAuthn interaction, these URLs are actually, or these origins are actually compared, and we are safe that is not happening, because a WebAuthn device will never return a signature when the website doesn't match in terms of the domain. So that is one of the big improvements also. Mm-hmm. That is a big issue right nowadays. One of the most successful attacks for hacking accounts. There's the password problem, and there's also the phishing problem.
Yeah, that was a really big problem when people really started using mobile devices, and they had the huge, long, multiple subdomains, and people would only look at the beginning.
Yeah.
Browsers have gotten better, but still some of them can be so long, I'd imagine they wouldn't fit on the screen.
Yeah, browsers try to highlight the actual domain and disable like gray out the subdomain or something like that in order to help users identify this. But it's still it will never get perfect, of course. So if you can get that comparison made by just a computer, it's better, of course.
So the argument seems, I mean, I've never really had trouble with the WebAuthn argument. There's a lot of improvements made. One of the things is that I've always struggled with is, well, what is it, like 20% of users or something like that are using second factor authentication at all? So
Yeah,
adoption of sort of non-password things, it just seems to be pretty hard. Like, is WebAuthn, is there data on the kinds of adoption that it's getting? Like, because, for example, if we achieve this threshold of me having a device that can handle my authentication for me, right, or something that can do that, if everybody has that, then the user experience is a ton better than having a one-time password thing, right? It's way better than having it sent to my phone for sure. And I use Bitwarden, right? It's better than my password manager doing that for me. So like that would be a nice world to move into. Like, how well is that working?
well, actually, we focused mostly on developing the Ruby server side library for that, and that will be a question more like for the actual systems and applications that have made use of WebAuthn, that have adopted WebAuthn, and maybe like getting some numbers from big systems like GitHub or Shopify or Google or Basecamp, for example, trying to see what what percentage of their users have actually registered this kind of security keys.
No problem.
Yeah, we actually don't have really good numbers about the. Yeah, we are optimistic about that, but there is, of course, as you said, the fact that people are not used to some of these some of these security keys or technology. There are challenges in terms of user experience because some people might find it weird, for example, to get a pop-up from the browser asking for things they were not used to see before. There are challenges in adoption, but
we're still in the early stages. I think. I mean, it's widely supported in terms of browser and platforms, but the next step is websites actually supporting this and users getting acquainted with this. So this will take some time, of course, as anything new. There needs to be some learning curve for users and for websites. It will take some time. We'll see how this evolves, but so the promise in terms of user experience is quite exciting. So we're hopeful that this will get some very good adoption, and maybe if we're talking about 20, 30, or 40%, maybe that's very good. Anyway, so we'll see. But thinking in the future that if you're on a mobile phone and you're using a web browser, instead of you typing on this very small keyboard a password, you can just use your face or your fingerprint, and you're telling you're asking a user what you want better, to actually tap a fingerprint reader or type a password. I suppose everyone would actually prefer to actually use the fingerprint reader, considering that you're not sending your private information to the website. That is a very important thing to understand, and maybe it's not very intuitive that when you're actually using your face recognition software, you are not sharing your face with the website. That is maybe not intuitive. So maybe the challenge there is to help users understand that they're not relaying this information to the website. Maybe some won't trust this anyway, despite you telling them. So that is okay. But we'll see. It's in a way there's also the learning curve includes some cultural shift or something like that. In that sense, in that you're get acquainted with this and you start feeling safe after you use a few times. We'll see.
Well, I think you guys posted the use case from even login.gov. And John, they had some user statistics in there if you haven't seen that yet. But I think, like you mentioned, there's a nomenclature thing and getting people used to this.
Yeah.
Because your Android phone could be your device, your Mac could be your device, your external YubiKey could be your device, and those are all going under the name of security key. And
Yes.
if you don't understand that all of those things fit in that bucket. And that was interesting too, because it's the government, they can't recommend one particular thing because that's a financial transaction. And so then people don't know, well, where should I go get one of these things? But
yeah, we've seen some discussion around making, like, in the challenge of actually finding a term that fits, like one size fits all. So we've seen some discussion around, like, calling what are called, like, the roaming. There's this distinction in the spec about what roaming authenticators and platform authenticators. So you can think about roaming authenticators, the UV key, or anything that's external to your actual to where your web browser is running on, and then the Touch ID or the fingerprint on your Android phone is actually a platform authenticator because it's on the same device as your web browser. So there's been some discussion, maybe for users, it's better to have different names for these two things, like giving a different using a term specifically for platform authenticators, something that is embedded in your laptop or your phone, and maybe using a different term for the YubiKey and those kind of things. But there's still no like industry standard on how to call those devices. There's websites actually playing with this and seeing what is, like, in a sense you need to do some UX research around this and see how users feel, whether this make them understand better, it's more intuitive, or they trust it more if you have a better term for this. So it's still we need to mature in terms of nomenclature and maybe user experience a bit to regarding implementations on the websites.
There's no reason you have to use their nomenclature. You could list out all the different types of devices and even check if they're on Chrome and suggest that they use a certain thing, or on an Android device, by the way, you can use your device as a key.
Yeah, you could name it whatever you want. Like, on your iPhone, you could say, use your finger thinger. But one thing that I'm wondering, how do I actually put this into my Ruby app or Rails app?
Yeah, some Ruby discussions. So what we did was build WebAuthn gem, Ruby gem. So with that, what we're trying to do is that the answer to that question is as short as possible, so as easy as possible to actually implement it. So most of the things that the web server needs to do to actually have this ceremony, like these interactions come together, are actually implemented in this Ruby gem. So first, if you want to include this in a Ruby application, what you first need to think is what you want WebAuthn to be on your authentication. If you want to use it as a second factor, the first thing that you need to do probably is when in the case that when the user is actually is already signed in, you need to provide some page in which you actually ask your users to register a new security key on your if you have already other second factors list, you can tell your users to register new security keys, and then you need a couple of JavaScript sprinkles and to call these WebAuthn APIs on the browser, and then relay all the information that you get on those JavaScript callbacks. Just relay that information to the backend, and on the backend you can just call a few methods on the WebAuthn gem, and you will get like a response telling you
this is all good, or there's WhatsApp verification error. And that's mostly what you need to do. After the successful verification, you will get a few pieces of data, mainly the public key out of the verification. And then this public key, you need to store it on the database next to your user. Then the verification step, when the user sign in and you ask the second factor, will be a similar interaction, in the sense that you need to call another JavaScript API, relay the information again, make a verification, and just finish there. So there's not a lot that you need to do in terms of code. So if you're doing this on your web app and you have already, let's say, SMS as a second factor, I'd say that the pull request that you will have to make to include this as another second factor, it wouldn't be too big. I'd say the pull request.
Yeah, that it's important to note that what Gonzalo, it wouldn't be too big in the context of you using the gem. Because if you go on your own trip to implement all of this yourselves, well, it's gonna get complex. The standard defines a set of 20.
Oh no, I'm lazy. I want to use your gem. That's what I wanted to know about.
Yeah, it's a lot of cryptographic heavy lifting you need to do. There are examples of people that has gone the wrong way. For example, there's this course pull request we have been following, where someone, it's already integrated, it's already done. They did it all manually, and it's good to see how people do it. And there's, of course, people that have used the gem, and in those versions, it has ended up being pretty short in terms of code and efforts. So
I've seen maybe longer pull requests if you need to migrate from U2F to WebAuthn. So WebAuthn is backwards compatible with U2F, which is a great thing because you can just migrate your. So if your users were using U2F keys as a second factor, you can still continue supporting that. But of course, if you're using that in your application and you need to, your pull request will be a bit longer because you need some migration happening. And in order to support both things at the same time, but it's possible. So the good thing is that you can migrate. You don't need to make backward incompatible changes.
Yeah. There's also the fact that, we tried to document a lot in the gem itself to answer this question for our users. Like their first approach to WebAuthn, we tried to leave as much resources and they're kind of building a recipe for them to be able to implement the WebAuthn in their own systems. We have also built demo applications that are blank sheet applications with just the necessary code to have this in an application. The applications are plain registration and sign-in and nothing else. So it's good for them to check out how it's done there. We are currently building a version of that application that it uses it as a second factor for people that are going that way.
Yeah.
And there's also many other folks that have, like, for example, written blog posts on what was their experience while using the gem and adding WebAuthn, which is actually great. There's a bunch of other pull requests around there. For example, rubygems.org. We have done a pull request to add that to rubygems, which is good to use as an example to how what amount of changes, code efforts you need to do something like this. So yeah, there's a bunch of examples around there you can check out and see the amount of effort you'll dedicate.
Yeah, I looked at the diff on the Ruby gems, and it's not a great deal. I was pleasantly.
Yeah. We hopefully will be able to have such technology there soon.
Why has that not gotten integrated yet?
Well, yeah, that's maybe it's a time of. We actually didn't get much feedback, to be honest. But maybe I'm sure they're really busy, so it's not. It's not. We tried to do it. It was at the same time we had some problems. Some gem owners had been recently hacked, and they were pushing like some malicious version of well-known gems. I don't know if you remember, it was like a raid of that quite a few months ago, and it was like it came to Arise and said we should add the WebAuthn to Ruby gems, and it looked like the right thing to do. It was a good example for adoption. It was like if we do this, and it will also lead the path to other people trying to add this technology, and at the same time we're doing something good for the community. So, probably
we're waiting for feedback. So I guess we'll see. At the same time, RubyGems.org made some great improvements around security. For example, it wasn't happening before, but right now, when there's a new gem push to Ruby Gems, every owner of the gem gets an email letting them know that something has been pushed.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't happening before, so that made these attacks easier in the past, because a hacker could get into the account of one of the Ruby gem owners of a particular gem, and they would silently push these new gems, and the owners wouldn't know about. So right now, for example, just sending an email to all the owners telling them about this new version, that is a great improvement.
Of course.
Yeah,
they have tackled that problem in different ways.
Yeah,
we try to contribute with one that maybe it will be the case, maybe not. We'll see.
Yeah, of course, most security is in the human domain. That's where most of the breaches occur. Since you've gone through this process, one thing that I was curious on, there were a couple of labels on each of the libraries. One is FIDO certified and FIDO conformant. Can you talk as to the difference between those two?
Yeah, so
looking in some other language or something like that.
Sure. So as we were saying, the WebAuthn standard was written between it was an alliance between the FIDO Alliance and the W3C, and at the same time, the FIDO Alliance wrote this tool that has a lot of tests that you can run against your implementation. It could be the library implementation, or it's against a web server that in our case it's a web server that runs our library, a Ruby library, and you can run this tool against your server, and it will tell you how many of the tests are passing, right? So this was built by the FIDO Alliance in order for you to assess how conformant you are against the spec. So if you get all the tests passing on that tool, you can be labeled FIDO conformant. To be FIDO certified, you need to actually make an investment and actually go through a more formal certification process, which, to be honest, I don't know exactly how it works, but it's more involved, and you need to actually start have more interactions with the FIDO Alliance and actually go certify your product. I've seen that this is more interesting probably for actual devices. So for the authenticator or the security keys, that they need to be certified by the FIDO Alliance. In our case, for a Ruby open source library, we focus on running this test tool against our library, and actually we're able a few months ago to actually pass all the tests and be labeled FIDO conformant. Also shout out to Bart DeWater from Shopify, who helped a lot in the development of this gem, and in particular with making the Ruby gem FIDO conformant. So thank you, Bart, for that. He's been an amazing contributor to the WebAuthn Ruby gem.
Yeah, the good news is if you as Gonzalo said, as a gem developers, we are very interested in taking in going in going certified. But the good news is, like, if you're a big application, you're a big company having this application, and you add the gem, the process of getting certified, taking into account that the gem is conformant, should be easier than if you go your own way.
Yeah.
So you have at least some already path done for you.
So a follow-up to some of our earlier questions. So you guys have written this Ruby gem or whatever, so you can do this authentication. What's the ecosystem like, or what about people that are using, Devise or other sorcery, whatever? That's an older one, but what about those people? Like, what are integrations like? Are there a ton of tutorials that you guys have seen? Are they kind of rare? What's it look like?
So right now, the Ruby gem is complement. It's a complement to all those tools. They're not getting in the way of Devise or any other Ruby authentication library right now. The footprint of the WebAuthn gem is not that big, and you can just add it if you're using Devise, and you can add it and probably just complement it right now. We've been adding WebAuthn as a second factor on Rails application that had Devise, and it wasn't actually an issue. It was just you would add some code and it will complement what you had already.
Sure, but you're probably hooking in, right? Is what I'm guessing.
Say again, sorry.
Sorry, you're probably hooking into some of the lower level Devise things in order to make that happen, right?
So it depends. I guess that it depends on how many of the Devise modules you have enabled. I'd say, but because Devise. So if you are using, we've been, for example, enabling this on Rails application that had Devise for the password for the password authentication. So this can see on the as a second factor coming after that. So there's no actual integration like you would just plug this into a Devise enabled application and it will work out of the box. Maybe that's something that can be explored in the future, or maybe someone wants to tackle that. But there's not right now. It's not that you plug it. It's a plug and play, and it sits inside Devise, like integrated into Devise right now. Yeah, but you can still do. You can still do. It's not. That is incompatible with Devise.
We had the plan. We had the plan to build such extension, and I have worked and experimented around that as in the past, and I'm still have the plan to actually build it. To be honest, I haven't had the proper time to sit down and actually go all the way through, but it's in my way.
Yeah, my understanding with other systems like Authy, for example, which is run by Twilio, is that essentially it just sits. So right after you authenticate with your password, then it just sits as the next step in the workflow. And so it seems like this would kind of do the same thing. And if you can't properly give the second factor authentication, then it just logs you back out.
Yeah, the only Ruby authentication framework that we know that has this actually integrated and working out of the box is WebAuthn from Jeremy Evans. He recently released a version from his gem, this WebAuthn gem with WebAuthn support using the WebAuthn gem. I haven't had a lot of time to check it out, but I know this has happened, and yeah, it's something that maybe people want to explore if they are building their application from scratch and they are actually looking for WebAuthn support from scratch. Maybe that's something that interesting to explore.
Yeah, it looks like there's plenty of space for more articles and possibly wiki pages too.
Yeah, I noticed there's a WebAuthn Rails gem as well for pulling it straight into Rails too.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. There's also the fact that the gem is agnostic to, for example, to Rails. So there's things that you, in the context of a Rails application, regardless of any authentication device, you actually need to take care of yourself. For example, as Gonzalo mentioned earlier, you need to store the public key next to your user, whatever that means for you. And there's other information you actually need to keep yourself in the most in the way you see fit. But we know that most of our users are probably going to come from the Rails ecosystem. So there's also the plan in our future, near future, to have dedicate time to build some wrapper around active record and active record implementation that gives you the basic generators and put some tables, handle some interactions, and you just say, hey, here's my user model, do the rest for me, and we will do it. And that's, in a way, probably earlier than any other device or specific authentication framework work.
Yeah.
That's what I would expect, honestly.
Yeah. It's like as times passes, we see like repeated patterns on different applications, which makes you think like this can be generalized and actually made part of the gem, so that you continue to construct layers that provide more abstraction to the user. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's sometimes we want to do a lot of things, and the time it's tricky to find to actually dedicate us full time to this.
Yep.
Have you heard of Atwood's Law? He says that anything that can be built in JavaScript eventually will be built in JavaScript, and that includes mobile apps. You can build awesome mobile apps and Apple TV and other apps with React Native. Come check us out every week as we talk about some of the ins and outs of building mobile apps with JavaScript and with React on React Native Radio. You can find it at reactnativeradio.com.
All right, well, I'm going to push us to picks. We've already gone pretty much right up to the scheduled time, and we like to shout out about stuff. So I'm going to make Matt go first. Matt, do you have some picks?
I wasn't prepared, but in light of the conversation, my pick is YubiKey.
Nice. Can we get a link to that in the chat for the show notes?
Yeah, I can pop that in there.
All right, John, what are your picks?
So I've got one this week. I've been doing a freaking ton of gardening and other outside things recently, and it is now summer in the Northern Hemisphere. So it's warm and toasty, and you need to drink a lot of water under those conditions. And so since I've been outside for like long periods of time, I've been filling my freaking Swell bottle. And so I dug that out of the closet, and I've been super happy. But like I leave this thing outside for like, it's like one of those vacuum seal bottles. I know there's tons of like knockoffs and things like this. I got this one a while ago. I've been pretty happy with it. But yeah, I freaking leave this thing outside for like 8 hours, and it's freezing cold in like direct sun, and like on a 90-degree day. I know that I left it in a car once a few years ago on a 100+ degree day, and came back out after work after 8 hours or whatever, and like my ice had barely melted. So just when you're like trying to drink water, like use good tools to drink your freaking water.
Nice. Dave, what are your picks?
Our first pick is carbon.now.sh. It allows you to generate really nice code snippet images. So that's my first pick. I found it, and it's pretty cool. And my second pick is Rubidium, which is a project that I've been working on for creating reusable and shareable snippets of code. So it essentially will allow you to have an existing application, and if you want to add a feature or functionality into there, you just search for a template, and then you run a single command, and it'll go through the normal Rails template stuff, and it'll apply it to your application. And so I've been building in a lot of new features. It's kind of like turning out to be more like a GitHub kind of thing, where you can create your repository. You can then do code changes. It'll give you diffs between the codes versions and stuff. So it's been a fun project, and it's starting to gain some momentum.
Awesome. I'm going to throw in a couple of things that I'm working on. One is Rails Remote Conf. I think I mentioned that before. It's going to be in August. CFP is open until sometime in July or maybe June 30th. I don't remember. Go look at the website, railsremoteconf.com. And then I'm also going to throw out a couple of other picks that I've got going on. And these are all projects that I'm working on. One of them is podsurge.com. I think there's a landing page up for it right now. But I'm really working to get together some information. It's going to be kind of like Railscast or Drifting Ruby, except for podcasters. And so I'm looking to just do a couple videos a week and, give people something to pay for. And then I'm also doing something very similar, except it's audio only for developers. And so you'll be able to get, I'm pretty sure I'm going to just wind up putting up authenticated RSS feeds and things like that. So you can get it in your podcast app, or you can just use the Codeneer app, but it's going to be codeneer.com. And so right now those are all landing pages, but I would love, if you're interested in them, to go and have you actually put your information in so I can let you know when it launches. But yeah, I'm working on both of those. And we'll see where we wind up with that kind of stuff. Gonzalo, do you want to go next?
Picks? What?
So just shout out about stuff that you love. It could be a TV show. It could be a water bottle. It could be, whatever. Anything that's making your life better.
Maybe while he thinks, I can go.
Yeah, go for it.
Sure. I have realized yesterday on Twitter that GitHub has this client that allows you to, for example, approve pull requests or interact with a bunch of GitHub pages. With in your workflow, it's really useful for example, when someone in Slack asks you to approve the pull request or I don't know, whatever, and you need to do some quick action and the context switching, it's kind of a lot. I have realized that this client exists, so I'm very excited and I started using it. It's pretty useful.
Nice.
So I can show that to Proform treadmills. I got one 2 months ago, and it's been it's been making my life better in these times. So being able to stay fit in home. So Proform treadmills. It's been great so far.
Awesome. All right. If people want to connect with you guys online, where do they go?
Probably the easiest way to get to us is through the company website, which is c.cog.com. Or you can reach us out in there. There's our Twitter handles, LinkedIn, GitHub accounts, everything. It's in the company website. But you can get to us through all those channels, LinkedIn, GitHub, Twitter. We'll be glad to have a chat, answer WebAuthn questions for everybody.
All right, sounds good. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap this one up. Thanks for coming. This was really interesting.
Awesome. Yeah, glad to be here. It's an honor that you invited us. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. A pleasure to be on your show and to discuss this and to spread the word. So thanks for the opportunity.
Awesome. All right, folks, we're going to wrap this up. Until next time, Max out.
All right. Talk to you later.
Thank you.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.